the narrow margin between reality and imagination, unreality. How close those two things are in my life, that maybe I thought I was Captain Kirk.
There may be a lot of Bill in Kirk and vice versa, but he is not Kirk, nor am I Spock, really. You know, we play around with these titles and we joke about it, but the fact is he's an artist.
There is definitely a huge piece of my dad that I don't know if anybody knows.
There's a rumor mill about Shatner 1.5 miles long, and it goes from the sublime to the ridiculous, and from the glorious to the villainous.
It was calculated at a certain point that William Shatner was probably known by 1/4 of the people on the planet because of his role as James T. Kirk in Star Trek.
William Shatner. It might be true that more than 1 billion people know the face, but not many can claim to know the man. Shatner has a secret sanctuary north of Hollywood in the High Sierra. It's a place where few people and no cameras have boldly gone before.
Welcome to my home. I found this place about 20 years ago. I came along the country road. I walked into that field and it was waist-high grass. I looked around and that was all. I said, this is the place, and went to buy it immediately. Come on, I want to show you something that I've done here. As I cleared some of the brush near the river, I found holes in the granite where the Indians had mashed the acorns. And then I began to hear about and understand that Indians had lived here up to 100 years ago. I have put into solidity what my imagining of the Indians were like when they lived on this property. Here's the twilight time, not the twilight zone. There was a time in my life when I didn't have any money. I had done well, and then I was divorced, and I didn't have any money. And I needed to sell this place. And I sat right there one summer's evening, half crying because I knew I had to sell this place. And on one of those rocks, a lizard came. And the lizard stood on the rock, and as the water hit the rock, it splashed up. And the lizard was grabbing globules of water, and that's how the lizard drank its water. And I sat looking at it. There's nobody around. I was naked, in the water, alone, naked, watching a lizard drink. And I thought, I cannot, I will not, I must never, in my lifetime, sell this place. I love the philosophy of me and the earth being one. I love to lie on the grass and listen to the earth grow. And I love this farm as I keep trying to do it better and planting more trees and find ways of growing things without hurting anything else.
While Shatner earned his fame and a modest fortune in the United States, he remains a Canadian citizen. He was born in Montreal in 1931 and returns to his first home for the first time in many years.
I was one of a very few Jewish families in this neighborhood, and the kids used to jump me because I was Jewish. And I got into fights every day with 2 or 3 kids jumping me at the same time, and I used to win. Most of them, and all the kids would stand around yelling, "Fight, fight, fight," and I'd had to struggle. This first house right here is where I was born and brought up and played. I'm going to go to that house now and see if there's anybody there and ask to go in.
This program is brought to you in part by Chatelaine Magazine. Pick up the latest issue on newsstands now.
J'ai demeuré ici beaucoup des années à Montréal. Ici, dans cette maison.
Are you putting me on, or is this true?
It's absolutely true.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and I lived in the room just before. Is it still a kitchen, the far at the end?
Yes, it's changed quite a bit.
And the first room, is that still a bedroom?
Why don't you come in and see?
That was my room.
Yes?
Can I come in?
Please do.
Is this wild? Monsieur le Bigger.
I have a son that's going to be thrilled.
Oh, well, this was my living room. This was the living room. This is where I cut up.
How many years ago?
I was born. That's
So that's about 20-some years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was at least and in there, there was a sofa right here. And my parents bought the sofa. And this was during the time they were very poor. And they had just bought the sofa, and I had a pair of scissors. And I cut up, I don't know why.
Did you?
I cut up the sofa and hid it behind pillows. Then, over here...
That's why the pillows were so comfortable.
This was my parents' room.
Yeah,
Hello.
my wife.
How do you do? Excuse me. I was born here. I used to live here. I used to play, and my dog and I used to play in there. I used to jump over that fence. I was born in this house.
But you are so young. Is it impossible?
It is impossible.
Yes, because
My wife, Elizabeth?
I want you to get a close-up of his wife, Elizabeth. What a beautiful, look how beautiful your work is. Una artiste.
But that's true. You're born there.
Absolutely. Yes, this was my bedroom right here. This was my
A
bedroom.
good one.
Come here.
That's why you had...
This was my bedroom.
Vous êtes encore jeune.
I had a bed right here, and that was the window I jumped out of into the laneway down below. I would get out of the house, and I lived with my sister Joy, and sometime later, my sister Farla came along. So Joy and Farla and me and my parents and my dog. This is so wow. Thank you so much. I'm sorry to disturb you.
Not at all. It's a
that's
surprise.
Okay. Have a good day.
Thank
Yes,
you,
well,
same to you. My parents also bought a new dining room set. And they also, at some time later, bought me a tool set. I took the saw and I sawed all the legs off the table, leaving it standing on the table. We sat down to dinner and the table collapsed.
It's pretty bad.
And so did my father.
I like it.
I was terrible.
Don't give all these ideas myself.
Thank you, Mr. Leviger.
Nice to meet
pleasure.
you. Thank you so much.
Bonjour, madame.
Have the same Montreal.
Thank you.
Anytime.
That was wild. I enjoyed that.
And you saw,
You see how small that house is? The theater is gone. Oh my God. It's Le Club Medico Sportif. Yeah, the Monkland Theater was a movie theater. I spent my life in this movie theater. I saw all the movies that came out in those years at the Monkland Theater. And it's gone. I first read science fiction right in there, which is now a restaurant, was a bookstore.
The bookstore is gone, so too the movie theater. But not the child in William Shatner. From the very start, he was a shooting star. Quick, energetic, confident, and not just a little brush.
The greatest city in the world. And now I'll get back into my limo. Makes it even a better city. I had a grand time in the Monkland movie theater. Then there was a drugstore right next door. I grew up in that drugstore, going from sodas, asking for a soda, to trying to get the courage up to ask for a condom. This is where I went to children's drama school. That house over there was a studio of Dorothy Davis and Violet Walters. I was a natural, and I was like one of the only boys as well, so I was playing all the hero roles. I was Prince Charming in Snow White, and I had to kiss the 6-year-old girl. Even then, my blood was stirring. I remember the first day I was there, and Violet Walters, who had very grand dame, was talking like that. She was a diva. And I thought, well, that's the way actors move, like that. So I tried to be a diva. This was Violet Walters.
And how old were you?
6, 7.
And you walked like that?
Well, that's the way you walked when you were. Then I learned to do the walk.
And it's also when little William Shatner got his first inkling of the sheer power of performing.
When I was 6, we put on a camp play involving Germans taking away Jewish kids. And the lights went on in the auditorium, and we took our bows. I saw an audience full of parents weeping. I remember the feeling of awe in which I saw myself manipulate an audience. And then I remember my father having picked me up and the feeling of love, the strokes I got as a result of Wasn't Billy Wonderful? Those two elements never changed for the rest of my life, and I knew what I wanted to be from that moment on. My time at McGill was mostly putting on plays, doing the college musical for 3 years, producing, directing. And my whole time at McGill was spent in the student union and the surrounding buildings. I rarely went to lectures. I therefore barely graduated with a terrible, barely passing grade. And I failed every one of my economics requisites to get an economics degree. But I really enjoyed the musical courses, the English courses, the psychology courses. I was in the wrong school.
Next week on Connections.
How long has it been since you've been here?
I don't think I've been back since I graduated.
Well, we can go on in and
Well, here's
see it
a
anytime.
picture of Mr. Shatner with the red and white review. Is he
The red and white review.
You remember that one?
Oh, sure. This is how I spent my
That's how you got your...
life.
And if you look underneath that, you might find the one where you were graduating.
Let me see.
There's William Shatner. Whoop. Get a little closer.
That's wild. Haven't seen that picture in a long time. Who's that?
Should we go on in to
Yeah.
Boise Hall?
Today, Shatner beams back to McGill University and to the early episodes of William Shatner, stage actor.
So this is the way we spring out on stage and try and, with a maximum of energy and lack of talent. I learned the joy of entertaining. I learned the mechanics of producing. I learned to be empathetic to fear, and I learned to appreciate talent and the courage it takes to come out and entertain. So much time, so long ago, and so quickly. It could be that I remember the black flooring. This could be the same floor that was here years ago. It's really wild to come back to the beginning, see the end. This is great. Centre universitaire William Shatner.
Mr. Shatner, I'm from the McGill Reporter.
Hi.
My name is Leslie Stout.
How are you,
It's
Leslie?
lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
And do you have any one fond memory that sticks out, or a play perhaps that meant
No.
the most to you?
Mostly it was girls.
Okay, that works nicely.
Shatner wasn't a serious student, and he certainly wasn't grooming himself for a role in his parents' successful clothing business.
Okay, good. All right. I, in effect, ran away from Montreal after college to the distress of my parents, who had another future for me in mind, and I starved in Canada. I was coming to Toronto to make my fortune as an actor. I was very fearful, and I had a limited amount of resources, and I had a limited amount lot of time and had been admonished many times that there was no way you could make a living in Canada by being an actor.
In a rerun of his Great Escape from Montreal, Shatner returns to Toronto in the company of his third wife, Noreen Kidd.
Or they made a phone call for you that you were coming, or
No, nobody made a phone call.
I didn't have any money. I didn't have any friends. And I started looking for a place to stay. And I felt that I had to get a place as cheap as possible. So I was walking around here, fairly near the CBC when it existed on Jarvis Street down here. So I found a place. And one day I came back early, and there were rats and mice playing. They didn't expect me back so early, so it was really awful. Can you imagine the size of the rats in here? It's left a mark on my soul.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never be hungry again.
The performers in Toronto were jealously guarding their position, and it was difficult to get in. Once you were in, you could make a good living as a radio actor, but to get into the radio acting clique was very difficult.
Honorable men, come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man.
I did what I could in Canada as an actor and writer. I sold some scripts to the CBC. I was at Stratford for 3 years. By that time, I had cracked the clique and was a performer. I never really got to know the guys. For some reason, me or them or both, I never really had any friends in the acting community. I felt different, I guess. You know, the Canadian view is very much what an actor's life is like. You have long moments of wilderness, untouched, and then boom, suddenly a lot of stops, a lot of noise, and yet those moments.
In the mid-50s, Shatner traded the Canadian acting wilderness for the noisiest stage of all, New York. He played for 2 years in the Broadway hit The World of Susie Wong.
The day I left Canada was the day I got married to a Toronto girl, and we got in a car, and we drove down to New York, where I had been performing with the Stratford Players, and I'd gotten good notices. And agents said, come back. In those years, people came to see the fun comedies that were popular at the time. And I was the light comedian. I was funny.
William Shatner's apprenticeship in the theater and on television was distinctly Canadian. I mean, he spent some time doing repertory theater in Ottawa. He did some work for the CBC. He worked for Stratford at the same time that both Lorne Greene and Christopher Plummer were there. So if you go back through the resume and then his movement into live TV, well, this is the same kind of pathway that a number of famous Canadians at the time who were performers followed.
Hollywood, the mid-60s. Shatner had a young family to support when he was offered a television deal, the lead role in an untried and unconventional series. It was called Star Trek.
Star Trek, and I had to make a choice as to whether to take it or not. And I thought, gee, that's so different, and it looks exciting, and it might possibly be successful, both in terms of security and in popularity. And I thought, well, I'll take a chance and do it.
Dr. McCoy is right in pointing out the enormous danger potential in any contact with life and intelligence as fantastically advanced as this. But I must point out that the possibilities, the potential for knowledge and advancement is equally great.
The energy and the courage in the character came with Bill. Bill brought that, particularly the energetic attack on the character. It didn't say in the script, he says energetically, or he walks through the door energetically, or he approaches people energetically, but Bill always did. So, and Bill does. That's Bill.
Tonight on the Biography Channel.
acting to me was Captain Kirk, you know. So I tended to do a lot of things with that sort of larger-than-life commitment that Bill had. And I mean, I played Oscar Madison as Bill Shatner. I played Fagin as Bill Shatner. Bill's had a wonderful career through me. He just isn't aware of it.
You could really see the connection between somebody like James T. Kirk and the Old West. I mean, Gene Roddenberry's original conception of Star Trek as, for example, Wagon Train in Outer Space was very much apparent in the way that's kind of swaggering way that Shatner carried himself. He was definitely a kind of a tightly coiled man of action. He was a thoughtful man, but he was a man who reacted first, and if it was necessary to shoot first and talk later, he was going to do that.
You know, he had all this ability and all this responsibility, but the job is larger than any one person, and there's sort of a humane acknowledgement of that in his performance, and almost a cockiness to it, of going, I can't do this, you know, but I'm going to have to. We're shooting from the hip. I'm up against people that, you know, can vaporize us with a thought, and I got to take them on. So here we go.
I never thought it would work until Bill came on board and brought that energy. Then there was room for a character like mine to take up another kind of space.
I won't remember the episode name, and I'm embarrassed that I don't remember the episode name, but it's the one with Sargon. It's these three glowing balls, and they're aliens. And Shatner has one of his great Shatnerian monologues with it, where he's talking about, you know, risk is our business. That's what the Starship's all about. That's why we're aboard her. And I just went, who is this guy? This is the most exciting thing. Now, I didn't know anything about the show. I didn't know what they were talking about. It's the first episode I've ever seen.
Risk. Risk is our business. That's what the Starship is all about. That's why we're aboard her.
Bill had a kind of almost Svengali-like power in that role, and particularly in that episode. And I was hooked into the guy like he was Houdini.
But not everyone was hooked, at least not at first. In 1969, after 3 seasons of less than stellar ratings, the original Star Trek series was canceled.
It was a tough time. When we made Star Trek, there were no residual laws. So that I think if they played it 5 times, then there were no residuals. The actors didn't get paid. So there was a great deal of bitterness, and still is, I think, among some members of the cast, that Star Trek made the studio and a lot of people very, very rich, and not the cast members.
I mean, let's not forget that after the program went off the air, things were very difficult for William Shatner, very difficult indeed. In fact, there was a point in his career where he was apparently, you know, driving around, doing dinner theater, doing his own driving.
After Star Trek, Shatner appeared in more than 90 dramas, but his trademark bravado took a beating.
I was filled with doubts all the time. I was ready to chuck it all. I didn't know quite what to do. I had a family to support. There were times when I couldn't get above a certain level of income, like a certain level of savings in my bank account. It just went on and on for years. I just hung in there. I don't remember anybody offering me a hand up. I never had a mentor or somebody who I never got anything for nothing. And that, I think, has shaped my way of thinking about people needing to survive on their own to the best of their abilities.
He has faced something that I think for any actor would be devastating. It killed Orson Welles, and it killed a lot of others, and that is that you reach what could be considered the pinnacle of your career at a fairly early age. And it's a huge impression, and people do not want to separate you from it. And yet, the job is done, and you want to continue your career, and you want to strive for other great things and different things, and you have to do it with the knowledge that it's very unlikely that lightning will strike like that twice.
But lightning did strike twice for Shatner, and in the same place, on the Starship Enterprise. It was the 1980s, there were TV reruns, and Shatner had a new and more lucrative deal to do Star Trek movies, to build a new legion of fans. There were Trekkie conventions. Star Trek was back in orbit.
We're talking about a pop cultural phenomenon which is unprecedented in the history of pop culture because it began at a time when television itself was very different, when the choice on television was far more restricted than it is now, and it was much easier for a program to stand out in those days as being different, as being to boldly go where no television program was going.
But the Starship Enterprise hit its share of turbulence. There were persistent rumors of power struggles among the cast.
During the making of the series, we were quite competitive. And I would say more like siblings vying for position. And there was a strong sense of competition.
Some people said he's a very difficult man, a tremendous ego, you can't talk to him. Some people have said, you know, he's an incredibly generous guy and wonderful fun and a practical joker and I guess for some reason I've always been able to distinguish between, as I got a little older, between actors' personas and what they might be like in real life.
I think it was later, and not even perhaps until we were making Star Trek 3, 4, 5, that we really began to find a new way of relating to each other and trusting each other in a new way, trusting that what we were both trying to do was the same thing.
Captain, I do not think you realize the gravity of your situation.
Oh. On the contrary, gravity is foremost on my mind.
Concentration is vital. You must be one with the rock.
Spock, I appreciate your concern, but if you don't stop distracting me, I'm liable to be one...
I remember standing on the one of the Star Trek sets once, and he was standing with Leonard in the outfit and in the captain's outfit, and he had a toy gun, and he and Leonard were kind of fooling around with the toy guns, and I looked at him and said, "Dad, you're just a big kid," and he kind of snapped the gun together, and he looks at Leonard and he goes, "My kids have found me out."
He, as you probably know, is a perpetual punster. It's always puns, and bad puns, too. They're very bad puns. He's not a good punster, but he'll try anything.
Like a seal. Seal of approval.
And he was very much involved with weekend off-road motorcycling at that time. And he would come in bruised and scratched and black and blue and aching, and I would laugh at him, you know. And I said, "Well, what happened?" Billy said, "Well, I was on the road, and I revved up the bike, and I just went for a little left turn, and there was suddenly a thing in the road, and I had to make a right turn, and I in the bushes, and so I got this scratch here, and then I landed on this shoulder. I can't move this arm, you know."
I think that my sense of adventure and the new things I get into all the time, almost by intuition, is part of a sense of wildness that I try to get into things involving nature.
I'm in my element right now. That's great.
Dad is quite the outdoorsman and the adventurer, and so we have a lot of adventures. We had an amazing vacation in Africa, and we just didn't do your normal like little tourist trip. Dad wanted to do it like out of Africa kind of style, and
which for Shatner meant trying to get closer to wild animals than was considered altogether prudent.
I was challenging myself physically in a lot of ways, and people who loved me were saying, "What are you doing? Why are you taking those risks?" And I didn't really have an answer until later on it began to occur to me maybe I was challenging my disappearing youthfulness to show myself that I still was there.
and vital enough to perform his own stunts, even mountaineering in the Himalayas while starring in a 1990s miniseries. In that drama, Shatner was cast as an ecologist, which he considers himself to be off-camera as well.
Most of mankind in the city have lost contact with nature. Once we lose that contact, we're dead, because then nature becomes a servant to man, and it is not that. It is the exact opposite. We are in the service of nature.
He will not rest until everything is fixed. Do you know? I mean, like, every animal's in its safe little place and the planet's cleaned up, and you know, he's done the last job that he could possibly think of doing.
I have a house full of dogs and I have a farm full of horses. But that is only a link to the other animals, the deer and the elk and the bobcat and the raccoon at night running along the road. So the horse is only a representative of all of nature.
Shatner joins a group of fellow ecologists on a trip to Santa Cruz Island off the California coast. Wildlife protection is one of several environmental and charitable causes Shatner champions through his celebrity. Today, he has come to draw attention to the plight of wild horses targeted for removal by the National Park Service.
Even the park can see.
Hi, everybody. I'm William Shatner, and I've just come back from Santa Cruz Island. I want to warn you, you people in this area, you're about to lose a national treasure. There are wild horses there on Santa Cruz, unique to this area, unique to the western United States. They're about to be taken off the island.
In this instance, not even Captain Kirk can vanquish the National Park Service. The campaign to keep the horses on the island ultimately fails.
I have taken a baby horse out of its mother's womb. I've been moved to tears of, I don't know what it is. I don't know why one would cry at the birth. Perhaps the very thing I talk about the sadness and joy of life, that life is both tragic and joyful at the same time. And at any given moment, you're riding the wave of one or the other. And even at this moment, I'm torn between tears and laughter because.
There's a sentimental side to Shatner which is barely concealed, and it seems to have its roots in a nagging fear of failure. An action hero, but a sensitive one.
I've never felt that I made it, like the phrase made it. I've always felt that the next thing that comes up will be making it. The next endeavor. The endeavors just keep getting larger, you know.
Welcome to the 8th annual Hollywood Charity Horse Show.
The things I contribute my time and money to are children and the environment and animals.
Since 1991, Shatner's annual Hollywood Charity Horse Show has raised close to $1 million for children with disabilities. Recently, the horse show has also provided assistance to Native American causes.
Thank you.
As a hands of the Hollywood Charity Horse Show, I'd like to welcome you all to our fantastic evening show.
Everybody watching this program should write out a check and make it out to a charity of their choice to give something, whether it's 50% of what you earn, 10%, or $1 to some cause that benefits somebody else other than yourself. My check would be to the children, because the young of any species moves me. I've seen a child with no arms and one leg, and she manipulated her environment with her toes. She held the reins of a horse while being balanced by two people. She drew me, I said, she was an artist. I said, draw me a picture of the horse and what you think. She drew me a picture of herself with the sun shining and everything was smiling. Happiest child. Got the picture hanging on my wallet. At my lowest moments, I cry for the sadness of the world. I sometimes find myself weeping at how sad
life and death can be, and then try to forget that in living these moments as fully as possible.
Next on the Biography Channel.
Would you give me your back to... I have so many ideas and projects.
There you go.
I just want to keep evolving, moving them.
I hope so, too.
I want to explore my life and loves as fully and deeply as I can.
Charity, you're so sweet. No, take my food here.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that.
Shatner married Noreen Kidd in the autumn of 1997.
I saw this beautiful woman across the room, one of those stories, and I was ending an unhappy marriage, and I saw this girl that just really appealed to me. And I'd call her from time to time, and we gradually got better and better acquainted, and finally
through laughter. We never laughed so hard on everything. We always got each other's humor.
Yes. And we fell in love, and it's been a most remarkable experience of my life, most remarkable relationship of my life, and I'm totally enthralled then, and more enthralled now.
My dad seems to have such a love of people and animals and his family. And so everything that he does, I feel like he wants to include everybody.
Shatner remains close to his 3 daughters, all from his first marriage. Dinner with family and friends is a weekly fixture.
And he came out with a smirk on his face.
Got a smirk.
There's that phrase that the press always uses, which is best known for, you know. Best known for his work in this, best known for her work in that, or best known as such and such a character. And that's going to happen to us. There's no question about it. There's no changing that. We have both done an awful lot of work since Star Trek, but I don't think Bill Shatner is going to be recalled as T.J. Hooker, although he, with the series, 5 years or something like that, very successful. I don't think he's going to be recalled as a theatrical, legitimate theater person that he always has been. I don't think he's going to be recalled for the commercials that he's done or for the 911 or any of those things. He will always be best known as, you know, as I will be, and I identify with that, and I think that's going to be the case. I think we both have come to accept it and to understand that it creates opportunities. It opens doors, and we walk through those doors to try to do other interesting work.
Shatner has never slowed down. One of the founders of Toronto-based Core, a large Canadian special effects company, he supports talent in new ventures. Shatner has also collaborated on more than 20 books.
Haunted houses.
He has managed to create a kind of a mini industry at which he is the center, and it includes books, television series, personal appearances, a number of different things. And I think it's probably a sign of the way the cult TV celebrity works. You can make a career out of just kind of being yourself and playing yourself for the rest of your life.
I'm finishing up a book in which I've done an enormous amount of research on Star Trek conventions. Traditionally, I've come in, I've done my hour on stage, a kind of spontaneous question and answer period, and get out. And so I'm in and I'm out. And then the idea of doing a book occurred, and I began to examine the audience more closely. And in the process of examining the audience, I began to fall in love with the people who were coming to the convention.
Yes, as Klingons, to deal with the Earthlings is very hard to do because they're not as honorable as we are.
Are you having a good time? I'm having a wonderful time.
I said, as far as sexiness, Kirk has got it. I'm sorry.
Oh, he gets all the women.
There was a time when Shatner was less than enthralled with Trekkies, but his ambivalence around being a cult figure has softened over the years.
There is so much love and so much interest and so much affection, so much history in these people who are coming to this convention that I went from someone who was casually performing a job to somebody who is vitally interested and really very conscious of the emotions involved in the convention. Okay, here we are.
This is the largest Star Trek convention of the year. It's the World Cup for Trekkies. It's called the Grand Slam because for the first time ever, 4 captains from the Starship Enterprise will appear in one place.
It was during the early evening television hour that I first encountered Star Trek and first saw this gentleman. Now, I had a black and white television set because I couldn't afford a color. Shakespearean actors, they don't get.
Why did you go to the Sea of Cortez?
Because the Baja fascinates me. I wanted to see the whales, the sea lions, the sharks, the eared grebes, and the blue-footed boobies, most importantly.
The blue-footed boobies, I mean, those boobies are just when they're...
Blue-footed boobies, ladies and gentlemen.
Now,
Shatner seems reluctant to relinquish center stage to his Star Trek successors.
Just trying to make things easy. Just trying to put things out right.
Talk to me. Over there. What's your name? My name is Here we go.
Just a moment. I'm going to get a hug, too. Come here, sweetheart. Okay, darling. Ask me the question.
Star Trek fans are, there's an energy to them that's a little frightening sometimes, and they are dramatic. And, you know, some people think of Star Trek literally as a religious basis, that the principles that were being proffered in Star Trek are stuff to base a society on. And here's Jesus Christ, for lack of a better analogy.
I haven't seen him very often at conventions, and the opportunity to get his autograph was just really exciting for me, you know, kind of to meet him in person. I like his character.
it's like the years have not gone by.
Thank you, Mr. Shatner.
Thank you. Thank you, you too. I'm waiting for success and my ship to come in. I feel as though it's yet to happen. Don't you?
What do you mean?
I mean, I don't feel as though the important things have happened yet.
Oh, I think a very seminal and incredibly important thing has happened to you. You changed the course of the history of primetime television.
Not really. I mean, it's good for you to say, and lovely of you to say, but it's not really true.
But it is true. Isn't it true?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Well, there's the authority. I'm wrong.
I understand what you mean as an actor.
As a human being.
Certainly.
And yet, I look in the mirror and I think something important's got to happen soon because it's not going to last that much longer.
He's perpetually in motion. There's always some place that he has to be. And if not, he'll create a place that he has to go to. He fills time with energy and activity and productivity.
People ask me what he's doing. How can you possibly answer that question? It is an impossible question to answer. Like he's directing this and he's writing that and he's saving this and he's, fixing that and, in building this house, that thing. I mean, he's involved in a million different things.
I'm not consciously leaving a legacy so much as I'm into absolute joy, orgasmic sometimes, joy of creativity.
If it's something that I experience, it has to do with wanting to leave a mark, wanting to build up a body of work so that you can look back and say, I used my life.
Here, the roses are almost giving us this sense of growth with the rich colors that he is using to depict the leaves, and there is spots of pink and red throughout. You see how he's simplifying the form. What's amazing here, the influence of Japanese art, Japanese prints on this one.
The whole idea that Monet had, how exacting he was about his pond and about the cultivation of his flowers. In clearing the riverside that I did something of the same kind. I tried, in my own simplistic way, to make that area that was Indian and spiritual with a kind of reflective pond that was totally natural.
Well, I'm going to go down to the river and wash up in the ice-cold runoff from those snows up there. Then grab a cup of coffee and admire the blade of grass. And then I'll contemplate my big toe. It's going to be a very difficult morning.